and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. Tonight we got a great show for you with my co-host Hawkeye Two Feathers. Thank you, David Null, for being here tonight.
Wow, it's Tuesday all over again, ain't it? Greetings, everyone, on a Saturday night. We always greet you with the love and the honor of the infinite Creator, and we continue to pray that each and every day, each and every one of you will continue to learn how to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, the wisdom, and the many blessings from the universe. And with that statement I just said, it ties in with what we're going to talk about tonight.
Yes, absolutely.
And, it's like, well, Hawkeye says this every time and blah, 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 blah. But no. It really means something. And so Robert's going to start us off, and we're going to get into some depths.
That's right.
We are. We're going to think it. We're going to overthink it.
Yeah, and then we're going to overthink what we think we shouldn't be thinking about. We shouldn't be thinking nothing to think about what we're thinking, if you get what I mean.
And if we think about it too much, we'll have lost the thought.
And that's usually what happens. People overthink. Yes. Anyway, tonight we're going to be exploring that mysterious world of thinking. Where do our thoughts come from? You're going to make me laugh too much. And why does it matter? Are there random firings in this brain or messages coming from something deeper? Well, maybe within? We'll dig down into the difference between the positive thinking and that negative thinking that we all do. We're going to look at the sources of creative inspiration, those inspirations that make you create things, and the science and soul behind the inner dialogue from our brain to our mouth, or maybe from our brain to our thoughts. I don't know, somewhere in between there. And the biology of brainwaves, to the philosophy of the mind. And are you a thinker, or is the thought itself? We're going to be looking at the brain chemistry. We're going to be looking about ancient views as a spirit breath. You've heard that before. Inner voices. A lot of us have inner voices. Is that the divine spark talking to us, our higher self? And where do our ideas come from? The theories, our subconscious mind, the inspirational, cultural, and conditioning that we all go through most of our life. Is this the muse that, plays a silent role in our daydreaming? Is our creativity discovered, or is it just downloaded like a bad computer program? Positive and negative thinking and their efforts on your health and your behavior. And we all know everybody's got some of both.
And your overall well-being.
Yeah. There's some crazy kooks out there, that are just plain crazy. And then there's people who have voices in their head and they're talking to us like, what are you doing? Who? You? Me? No, I don't know. Who is that?
The devil's standing right over there, and he's going to get you.
That's right. Yeah, if you're much in religion, that's going to come to pass too, and it's going to be, Anyhow, what do you have to say with all of that?
So, you know what, Robert? With all the stuff that you've been talking about and what I read, from the notes you sent me, this might be a two-parter.
It just may. It just may.
Because there's a lot of stuff to cover.
Oh, absolutely.
And the things I think we might cover tonight might lead towards all of the spiritual thoughts and things, and resulting from all the thought process stuff. So, but anyway, as you were reading, I was like, we're supposed to be here for an hour, and we ain't gonna be able to cover all that.
See how I get in these dilemmas? Anyway, my first thought for this show came from this book right here. Don't believe everything you think. And the more I read on this book, the more it made me think of this book. And if you've read this book or any of this guy's books, The Silva Mind Control, from getting help from the other side. Now, as I read this book, and it says, hey, it says that it started talking right away. It convinced me and made me think about, all these things about your thinking. And, who's, it says one who looks around him is intelligent. One who looks within him is wise. And that's a quote from some Misho Dignawe. Anyway, well, each of our lives, through our own perceptions of the world, which are vastly different from the person right next to us. And that's what caught my eye, which is so true, because two of us can be looking at the same exact thing and see something totally different. Why is that? Perception. And with that, each and every one of us has a different view of the world, our reality, and we think differently. It just tells us that we think differently. What do you say on all that?
Yeah, because our brain processes, we're looking at something and we're discussing a shade of beige.
That's right.
And and it's like that's beige. Yeah, but it's a little more towards the brown side. No, it's a little lighter than that. So two people standing right side by side, both agreed that it's beige, but one will say it's a darker beige and one will say it's a lighter beige. And so, tomato, let's go the whole thing off. That was a song, by the way. But
that was.
The tomato, da 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 da. Let's call the whole thing off. It was a song in
a movie.
Movie, yes.
Yes, it was a movie song. Anyway, you're right. From 100 different people, you're going to get 100 different answers. Here's the meaning of thinking as a filter through which we see life from then on. Because of this, we live through the perception of reality, not in reality itself. Reality is the event happened. Because we're always living in the past, because whatever happens, it takes a while for our eye to see it, our brain to register it, and it's already happened. Reality is that event that happened with no meaning, a thinking, or interpretation of it. Now, some of us here are remote viewers, and we've been practicing the remote viewing over on Max Vision's remote view class. I know Pamela Jean's in here, and she's been doing that. Elderberry, I don't know, have you been over there? Anyway, I hope everybody goes over there to Max's channel and does that and tries it out. Anyway, the thing is, we overthink, everything is connected, we have that perception, but we have to throw it out, and then we have to start over. That's what we don't do. We suffer because we think too much. We overthink. We let the ego possess us. We keep going on and on and on, and we never really get to the bottom of anything, because what is thinking all about? It's what we want to express through our physical world, right?
Right. But how we bring it about?
Yes.
It has to do with perception, but how we, how you both have a similar thought, but how you describe it and how I describe it is different.
Well, exactly. Even though like this show, we're talking about the thinking. Yep. Each one of us is going to have a different thought about thinking, right or wrong. It's all the same. I don't care what you think, but you don't care what I think, because you think you might be right. And my idea might be close to yours, and you might change your thought of thinking, but it's still never going to be exactly like mine.
Right. And, for the last, 60 some odd years, I've been thinking on things. And I told Robert before we started the show, I said, I should have been an anthropologist, because I study people and languages and things. But so anyway, this has been a subject that have read several books on and talked with peoples and medicine peoples and elders and, all kinds of stuff about the idea of thought and the idea of what you think will manifest. And an example is dun, 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 Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh, yeah.
They do not talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that who shall not be named, because they don't want to give energy to that thing or person or being or whatever. They don't want to give it energy. So
Yeah.
so they drive 5 miles out of the way to stay away from Skinwalker Ranch, because they in one of the episodes, the gentleman said, we even turn our heads away so that we can't even look in that direction.
Really?
That's how serious that it's not. It is about the skinwalker, but it's about the perception and giving something energy that you don't want it to have, And so, but I just had a thought about that. Whoa, that could have been the worst thing ever.
Anyway. Yeah, no, I agree. So why did we develop this strategy of thinking? And this happened, hundreds of years ago. It's sophisticated ability to rationalize, analyze, and think, because it simply helped us survive. That thinking process helped us all survive, because out in the wild, And there we go. We got Lucky Stone joining us, special guest
Lucky
tonight.
Well, and also too, it's like Lewis and Clark, who had never been in that wilderness before. They'd come around a corner and there's a tree in the way, and they had to think right away. They couldn't go, oh, there's a tree in the way. What are we gonna do? So somebody, and probably all of them, had some kind of idea of how to get the tree out of the middle of the river, right? So, and so that's, you say, well, that big deal. No, it is a big deal, because you got to figure out if you need rope, if you got to have to get out of the canoe. So you have to be able to think and walk through the steps before you ever get to the job. So, this hasn't, they knew about this for thousands of years, this thinking, or we wouldn't be here.
Well, yeah. Great ideas come from great minds. Lucky, what do you have to say about this
thing here?
Well, I mean, opinions, they're related. Everyone has opinions and everyone has a bum. So, I mean, who the heck knows, what we see? So what exactly was the question? I think I lost myself in that one.
We were talking about everybody thinks and everybody has a different perception of stuff. But then what did thinking do for us? Well, it helped us survive, because, it helped us rationalize and analyze and because let's see, it says here, I wrote down, we will constantly stay in a state of fight or flight, anxiety, or fear, frustration, depression, anger, resentment, and all negative emotions, because the mind thinks everything is a threat to our very existence.
I would disagree with that, but
well, yeah, that goes on to where you are in your mind. Yeah. It all goes down to what happens and what you do with it. I mean, if somebody really attacks me and upsets me and is really negatively towards me, it's not their problem. It's my problem. I pick it up, whether I say, it's nothing, or I say, you jerk, I fight back, and then I empower them. So, I mean, yes, the mind is a funny thing where it will analyze absolutely everything, but it could analyze it for the positive or it could analyze it for the negative. but that's also someone who's with severe anxiety and stress, and I worry about everything at work. But I realize now I don't have to. It's not my problem. I'm part of a friggin' team. So, I mean,
That's right.
I was big on what's going. Why do I have to do all the work? Why? And then realized because I do all the work. So I sat down my boss and he goes, "Yeah, we're part of a team, and from now on, if they're not going to pull their weight, I'm not going to pull their weight anymore either."
Yeah.
And that was my problem. And it's like, well, no, this is a team, and I'm like, no, the problem is I was taking on a lot of responsibility. This was my fault. From now on, it's a team. And if your team's not going to pull their weight, I'm going to pull my weight from my job. And then that's what stressed me out. I was stressed out because I was doing so much other people's work and realized that wasn't their fault. It was my fault. And again, it all comes down to stress and anxiety. It's all under our control, you know.
Yeah, well, and you're exactly right. Before, that's a really good example. You were overthinking, which your fears, your anxiety, your stress, all of those boxes were checked. Your thinking was doing, and then once you let it go and stop thinking about it, all of those things should go away. That's what our show is exactly about tonight. It's about letting go of all that thinking and filling your mind with other things. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got a kitty litter box in my head. So, but I want going back to what Lucky said. Now, I was an engineer and part of an engineering group when I worked as an engineer all them moons ago. But and there were those engineers that would start on something and it wouldn't work, so they would just keep trying to push the same thing when they wouldn't look for the problem. And so I was like, I've always had a different eye of things. And because I didn't go to engineering school, I started out as a machinist. I had a different idea of being able to look at stuff. And so I would see something and go, well, but what about this? All that ain't got nothing to do with it. So the engineers would like gang up on me. And guess what? They were all fired and I was still there because I used critical thinking. So they would go off the handle and this is never going to work. And they'd walk away and I'd do an adjustment and it'd start working. And they stayed mad at me. But my point about this is that as we think these things, I know, Lucky, I'm kind of sort of speaking for you, but we allowed it to happen, by doing the job or taking over somebody else's job because we feel like I want this to end out right. I want this project to be good. I want it to stand on its own. And these people are full of shit. And I feel responsible. So you fill in, and the other people get away with it, right?
Yeah.
No, that's the truth. That's the truth. Yes, exactly.
And so my point about that in long way around is that we allow it to happen because we feel responsible for whatever it is that's going on with the team.
Yeah.
Yes, and the truth is that my manager isn't pulling his weight. So I was taking extra responsibility and without managing anybody was telling them, okay, this is the best thing to do. And then because I'm not a manager, I have no power. So, it didn't get done. And also I did it for selfish reasons because I knew that if I didn't do some of the stuff, I'd be doing it the next night. But then I realized, wait, I don't have to be doing it for the next night. I can throw it back at them saying, yeah, this wasn't done because you dropped the ball yesterday without saying it that way.
Right.
So stop right there. Courtney's got a good one. And then I'm going to ask the question. When there's anything that is unpleasant around me, I say, I reject that. It's not of me and I move on. That's what she does. Now, here's the question. The question is what's the practice are you going to use to guide your thinking in a better direction now that you know that direction was a bad direction? How are you going to guide yourself thinking forward. That's the clue. That's the big donkey in the room.
It depends on the situation, though.
Yeah. And with age comes wisdom, hopefully. But and in there is of course, I've seen some 6-year-olds, that could take apart something and put it back together again. But and I could do that. I just, I didn't have to look at directions to put model airplanes together, So some people are born that way, of being able to put puzzles together or whatever, find words in a paragraph. But with that said, not everybody can think that way, and not everyone can process it that way. It's like, for me, I could see a pattern and go, well, don't you guys see this? And they'll go, no. And they're not stupid. They're well-educated people, but their observational skills are different from mine and Lucky's and Robert's. You know what I mean? We are individuals with critical thinking, and we look at something and go, that's not right. And everybody else is like, it's okay, it'll pass.
Yeah, that is true. So here's a few thoughts. You are not your thoughts. You're the awareness behind them. And negative emotions stem from unconscious thinking patterns. This is what we need to talk about next. True peace is found in the presence, not problem solving. And so many people say, I live in the present. I'm not going to live in the future, the past, and blah, blah, blah. So that's something to think about there. Thoughts come and go, but the observer, that means you remain constant. So should we let go of the mental stuff and start thinking clear? So those are my questions or thoughts anyway.
Okay. Well, you put a lot in there, but I'm not quite sure what was that cohesive thought.
Okay, so we know that are you your own thoughts, or did they come from somewhere else? Is there and then if your emotions, if you're unconsciously thinking, is that negative thinking? Is that negative emotions because you're unconsciously doing things? Let's start with that.
That's a complicated question, because a lot of people say that the negative chatter is the ego.
Yep.
And I learned that the ego in its negative chatter is only because we don't listen to it. So I listen to my negative chatter and I go, okay, thank you for your opinion. I'm going to take this and pull out the facts, and I'm not going to act upon it, but thank you. And I move forward. So my negative chatter is a lot less. But yes, I do have multiple thoughts in my head. And is that me? Partially. But a lot of it is just information that's coming from different perspectives. And it's my job to make it positive or negative. And for the most part, I'm going to try to make it more positive. At least I want to be positive at least 51% of the time. That's about it.
Okay.
But is it my? Yes, it's all me. It's all my fault. It's all my obligation or my responsibility to do with it. And you think it's the spiritual realm talking to me? Partially, maybe. But again, no matter what the spiritual realm tells me, it's my job how to take it.
That's well said. That is well said.
Now, for me, having been a machinist and working on tools and blah, 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 blah. So there are jobs that you can learn to where you will do them without thinking. Unconsciously, you will do something. I go out and I made coffee before the show. And so I didn't have to, where's the coffee? Where are the filters? Where are so, but I automatically reached for the filter, and there's the coffee right there, and I'm dipping it up. I didn't think through it. In my mind, I've already been through this enough times to where I just do it. So that's an unconscious thing. But at the same time, our consciousness is always awake. So it is a part of us. It's not yours. It's not Lucky's. It's not somebody else's. It's ours. We own it. You know, our ether, our energy around us, it's us. For whatever folks want to disagree with, no, it's us.
Okay.
Now, also for me, over the years, I have learned, especially as an engineer, I would literally, you know, I got a problem, and man, I got two machines that are down, and that's going to make one of our deliveries late to the Ford factory, and holy crap, they're not going to be able to build engines, and you know, and so there's a big heavy duty stress there, you know, and we're talking millions of dollars if we don't get this right, you know, and so I go outside and I walk around the parking lot. And I asked the creator, okay, I've got this problem. What can I do about it? And as I walk around and smoke a cigarette and just kind of ponder it, not think about it, but just, you know, well, I got this, and, you know, the guys are all mad. And then all of a sudden, ba-ding, what about this, Dave? Holy crap. And I go back inside and go to work, and the answer has come from heaven. I'm being a little facetious there, but you know, what is it called? The Akashic record.
Mm.
The quantum field that's existing everywhere. They're finding out that in the quantum all around us, the goo that holds us together that you can't see, that there are answers already out there. The answers are already in the universe. And the person who's good enough to be able to see those answers, meaning they've learned how to observe things differently. They've learned how to, you know, use their intuition, which is real important. You know, that gut feeling, and you go, no, that ain't right. You know, then follow up on that, right? And so, but anyway, over the years, I've found that, you know, to trust your instincts, especially if you've lived 50 years and you've done jobs and you have knowledge built up of things. So you should trust your instincts. That comes from the ether.
You know what? You just described this whole darn book right here. You wrote that book and made $1 million. Doggone you. Anyway, yeah. But well, you know, to get a little more technical terms on this, you know, this book basically talked about the same thing that you just explained to us in about 2.2 seconds, which is but he went in a little detail. So I'm gonna fill you all in on some of this extra. And it's talking about your right and left brain, the alpha and the theta waves, you know, which none of us really understand probably except Lucky. And and it's talking about
He stuck it on you, buddy.
No, I'm sure Lucky understands that when I talk. Don't you? Am I wrong?
What, alpha and theta waves?
Yeah.
No, that's far beyond my thoughts. I'm just a moron. I just like to sit and quietly and just.
But I'm saying you probably heard about the alpha and the theta waves and the right and left brain.
Heard all about the left brain and the right brain, and
there you go. I bet you there's a lot of people here who have never heard about that. Really.
Yeah. But you know what? Let me throw this in there.
Okay, go ahead.
As a person who's, you know, studying the shaman way, medicine man kind of thing, the right left brain never comes up. It never comes up in the conversation. It's all about being able to hear the answer in the universe, listening to the creator, you know, pulling this information out of the heavens, for lack of a better word.
Well, and I totally get that, but as science has advanced, like you were talking about earlier, we know these things now, and now that we know these things, we know there's a right and left brain instead of just a brain. You get what I'm saying?
I do, but in the practice of it, from dumb Indians to dumb Hindu guys and priests that are walking around, saying prayers, they ain't got a clue about this, but they're connected.
Yeah, but but here's the thing: they all say the same thing, because they're always talking about getting into that state, and meditate and calm yourself, and
this ain't got nothing to do with meditation. This is just everyday common being able to hear the universe. Slow down. There's something up ahead and you don't see it. So you hit the brake and you slow down, and son of a gun, there was an accident.
And again, that you just said it's a gut feeling. That's a gut feeling. That's listening to your brain. Somehow or another, you calmed yourself down long enough to let that information in, and that's what a lot of these things talk about. It says that you want to you could call it whatever you want, your higher self, your spirit guides, your divine intelligence, you're getting it from the Akashic records or whatever. It's all kind of the same thing. And it says here, it says you're getting this visualization from your mental projection, and you're gaining inner or otherworldly wisdom, which means there's an accident ahead, I need to step on the brakes and I don't know why. I need to fix that part and I don't know how to do it. So you go outside, you look at the stars and you calm yourself down, and that's when you activate that other side of the brain, which is the part of the brain now that scientists know, that's the part of the brain that connects you with everything else. But most of the people work on the other side of the brain, which is the logical part. Like, this is a book, this is a pen, up is up, down is down, it's all logical. And a lot of people are like that, logical. It's cold outside, it's hot in here, it's the wind is blowing, those are all facts, and I go by the facts and facts alone. But if we all went by the facts all the time, what a boring world this would be, because you would never be inspired by anything, and anything you were inspired by, you would throw it out the window.
Sometimes the facts lead us down to a broken road, though.
That's what I'm saying. Facts.
Well, the road's getting a little bumpy here. Is it going to end? Nobody thought about it. They just said, here's the road. And like you Google Earth, you get on Google Earth and it sent us to a road that wasn't there.
Yeah, so, no, but that's what I mean. People have watched Google Earth and they drove off the bridge and killed themselves, because they've just followed the road. It says drive forward.
Okay, so I want to go back to what you just said, and I disagree with it. And here's why. Because that critical thinking, whatever side of the brain or whatever hears the answer, right?
Yep.
You said, whoa, dang, that sounds like the answer. Okay. Well, that part of your brain finds it, hears it, but then the other part of the brain has to disseminate the information. So here's the message. That's one side. And then the other side, the logical and the other stuff, have to take that message and turn it into a coherent thought.
Yes, I agree.
Does that make sense?
Lucky, did you understand all that? What do you think?
That's the funny thing about science, is it's always learning. There's no such thing as settled science. Everything is a theory. That's the problem. Was back a few years ago during a situation that we all know so much about. The word settled science was used, and science has lost some of its passion, because science is never settled. Science is always learning. And the only problem with science now is basically you're paid to make your benefactors happy. And that's one of the problems we have. And so, yes, the right and the left side of the brain was a theory, but it became more truth that things are more integrated than we do realize. And yes, logic, you need logic, you need math, you need science. You need to, okay, these are the facts. We also need creativity, because without creativity, we're going to be staying in the same thing and not learning anything. And that's where science got stuck. We're at creativity, and the creative scientists tend to be the least paid. So the ones who are least creative and stay with the status quo, they make the most money because that's what the benefactor, that's what the big corporations want you to do. And until we get paying more for the people more creative, things in science are going to stay pretty much status quo.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally get that, but that's the whole point. It's if you just go by the facts, but like David's saying is, you need to train your mind to hear your inner wisdom or hear that wisdom. But if you don't pay attention to it, you say, no, I have to stick with the science. Let's use that example. You're going down, like you were saying, you're going down the road, and your gut instinct says, hey, my wisdom says, my inner science says that I need to step on the brakes and slow down because there's something come up ahead. I don't know. I have this gut feeling I should slow down, but your other part is saying logically the road is good. There's nobody out here. It's nice and straight. It should be safe. I can't see anything ahead. I'm going to step on the gas and go full speed. So which one do you listen to? That's the thing.
The information
side that says, hey, maybe you better slow down and take it easy for a second or two, or just hit the gas and go the speed limit.
Because your thought and your patterns, to explain it just a little more, you see the road, you see everything, the weather's good, and so your brain tells you, I don't see anything.
That's the facts.
And those are the facts. I don't see anything. Everything's clear. But your gut says, yeah, but what about a half a mile further down? And your brain goes, I don't know, but I just see the facts. So, but there are other things too, is like, when engineers or people or somebody's designing something, everybody goes, oh, look at that. That ought to work. And there's two guys sitting in the back going, they need to put a brace on that, and they need to put another brace over there. And sure enough, they build this thing and it goes teetle-leetle and falls down. Well, then the guys over there say, we told you should have put a brace up there that would have held it up. And this has happened to me before. So, you see a building collapse because they were stupid. But but the facts were that they built everything they did correctly. They followed everything correctly. But in the design of stuff, somebody didn't think about, it wanting to wobble before they put the siding on and everything, that you needed to put a couple braces in, and then the thing falls down. So is it the architect's fault because he didn't add it in the blueprints? You know what I mean? But a good carpenter will recognize and go, hey, boys, we need a couple of braces up here in the corners. And they go, but it's not on the plans. And he goes, I don't care. You're going to put braces up in these corners. This framing needs it. And so who's right? The carpenter. Why? Because he has had a building fall down before, and he has the facts. But right in front of him are the instructions. So he follows the instructions and goes, no, this ain't right. Okay, guys, we're going to do blah, blah, blah. And they go, but Cap, the drawings say that this is supposed to, that's wrong. It can't be there. And he'll take a few minutes and explain it. And everybody goes, oh, you're right. The architect was wrong. That's happened a bunch of times and it still happens. And so, but That's the idea of following the facts and then following your gut instinct, which says we need to put a brace in the corner, you know?
Exactly. Exactly.
Did that make sense?
Yes, it did to me. Lucky?
No, that's the thing is sometimes blueprints are great and all, but although they believe that they're working on the physics of the real world, while they're building, you got to go with what the guys who are building actually know, and sometimes it contradicts what the architect or the PNID drawing says.
A lot of times.
I have run into that myself, where I was part of a facility that was being built, and we said, "Hey guys, this is too constricted." And they go, "Oh no, we have hoses here and hoses here." I said, "No, it's going to take hours to filter anything that even moderately size." No, we have everything all set up. And the problem is, what happened was they had big hoses to come towards the wall, and in the wall they had small piping, and they had big hoses on the other side. And no one ever had the brains to figure out, hey, we need big piping when it hits those big hoses. And they only constricted it like a half an inch, but that half an inch constriction caused a major slowdown in the process. And we knew that in the beginning, and we warned them. But because these were big-brained, well-paid scientists, they had no idea what they were doing when they drew the stuff up.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the problem, is that the architect knows exactly what they're doing, but the physics of the real world sometimes is different once you actually build it. Even science. Well, part of what I do is we grow cells in tanks, and those cells produce a protein. They go from a small scale on the benchtop of like 10 gallons. And then from my side, they go 2,000 gallons. We actually use liters, but I'm going to say gallons. So 2,000. And they go, okay, we got 10 gallons here, and we should extrapolate what 2,000s are going to be. And we always say the same thing. No, it's not going to happen that way. But the scientists say, yes, we just multiply everything into 2,000. We'll know what we got. And the cells act totally different. And, and I tell them it's going to take you at least months to get an actual, because we need consistency. It's going to take you months to get consistency. But the scientists know what they know, and you're nothing going to change their minds until after the fact. They go, yeah, remember you said that? Could we talk? And I'm like, well, sure. What's the problem? And they go, yeah, you're right. We didn't get the production that we were expecting. And it's like, how can we get it up? And I'm like, it's going to take you 2 months, like I said in my original proposal. Because again, you have to run it several times before you get consistent results.
Right.
Because science and biology don't work in the real world. It can give you an idea, but it doesn't work the same in the real world.
And also, it keeps being proven about the observer effect with all experiments, with all kinds of stuff that you need to, try to replicate. So, which is interesting, because then where does that observer thing come from? It comes from us, and it affects what we're working on. Now, that's some stuff.
It's true.
But let me give you an example. A dear friend of mine who's passed now worked with osmosis stuff. The reverse osmosis. Okay, is that right? Where water and stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was working with him. And they had these things are under a humongous amount of pressure, amount of pressure. And so we're installing these fiberglass tubes with the filters in them, right? And hooking up the hoses on each end and everything. And it's a brand new building that they built onto a brand new wing off this building. And so he and a couple of others who work with the filters had designed the floor. So there was like 8 feet from the end of the tubes to the wall. And the architect said, no, that's too much. We only need 3 or 4 feet. And they cut it down. So as soon as they fired up them things, the tubes expanded out like they normally do and busted the wall out. They had to tear the wall out, fix the floor, extend the roof, because the architects thought they knew, oh, but we don't need that much space. So, but the engineers knew because they worked with the equipment. So there's this kind of stuff also that goes on. One side thinks they're smarter than the other side.
That's right. That is so true.
Yeah,
Do you find that in your with what you work with, Lucky?
Yeah, it's more complicated than that, but yeah, the guys who design hate unused space.
Right.
And we have to explain to them, we need the blank space because it will be filled up. And they go, no, it's not. Here's the equipment here and here. And you understand that the amount of tubing you need between these two places, the tubing needs to be so long, and it will, yes. Tubing under pressure changes shape. And you need to accomplish that. You need to accommodate with that. That's happened so much where I've had to explain to them that, yes, the problems you're running into, I expect, and here's what's going to happen the next 3 months. And that really pisses off some of the scientists because they go, no, that we know what the problem is. We're going to fix it now. And I'm like, no, it's going to get worse in the next 3 months. Yeah, and it always does. And they go, how'd you know that? How'd you know that? Because I'm a different department. I'm quality. And I said, because I've been in the industry so long that I know I've seen this happen before. And they go, well, we've been in the industry so long too. And I'm like, yeah, but you have never been on the floor. You're a scientist in the lab. We're in production. Where production and science don't always meet the same level.
They don't.
Yeah.
Because production has to take the science and make it work. And sometimes it don't work. And sometimes you got to fudge. They say, you got to add so many drops to a liquid or something. And you find out that there's 2 drops too many. And you go, well, and they say, well, no, but you don't have enough drops in this. And you go, but yeah, if you add them 2 more drops, it'll shut everything down. No, it won't. But they add 2 drops, everything quits. I saw 2 machines that were $1.5 million a piece. And we had worked out that there were like 20 stations on this thing, big around. And so we had figured out how we could make these stations work by turning down the speed. Oh, we got to have so many a minute, so many an hour. Sorry, this is a complicated machine. You need to slow it down. They wouldn't slow it down. They turned it up. The guys from Ford came down. Everybody was around these big machines. They cranked the thing up and stuff started smashing and bashing. And we just stood back with our arms folded and said, it's your machine. It's your problem, not mine. Mm-hmm. But, they wouldn't most of the time, I would say, that the people who are the chemical engineers and folks who have never worked on the floor, they're wrong most of the time because they've never worked on the floor. Oh, but you should just add 2 more drops and everything is no, sorry.
That's true. That is so true. I think a lot of us experience that stuff especially when you're in the peon guy. And the big boss says, do something, and it doesn't turn out. And you're like, whatever. I did just what you told me to. So
everything is sort of a math problem. It's like, well, if we do it like Lucky was talking about, here's a gallon. We should just be able to, 10 times this or 100 times this, and it should work. Nope. You have to consider the space, the volume, what's going on inside the tank. There's a lot of other stuff, that other than this 1 gallon. So, but you know, when you try to explain it to the smart guys, it goes right over their head.
Let's think about some of the greatest thinkers in the world. And I got a list of them here. We're going to talk about Buddha. Buddha taught that the mind is a source of suffering, not the world itself. His solution: observe your thoughts through mindfulness and meditation, realizing they're impermanent. This insight gave rise to the concept of non-attachment to thought. Okay, we have Socrates. He lived in Greece. He was a Greek. He says Socrates believed that most people walk through life driven by unquestioned thoughts and beliefs, which is so true. He used, maybe more now than then, he used dialogue to expose flawed thinking. Socrates, or questioning, is like modern cognitive therapy, probing whether our thoughts are true, useful, or even our own. Plotinus, 3rd century in Rome. Plotinus, Neapolitan philosopher, I can't even say that, believed that the highest knowledge came not from a rational thought, but from intuitive insight. So there you go. Those were some of the smart thinkers. Here's a guy, Carl Jung. I don't know, I've never heard of him. Jung believed the collective unconsciousness, a deep layer of the mind shared by all humans that contains archetypes and inherited wisdom. He also believed in synchronicity, meaningful coincidences, and emerge when we align with the deeper forces of the psyche and the spirit. And of course, our favorite that we talk about a lot nowadays is Nikola Tesla. May not have been famous.
The guy's name was Carl Jung.
Jung. Yes.
Okay, Jung. Okay, Jung. Carl Jung. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
That's how it was pronounced, but go ahead.
Thank you. Nikola Tesla, my brain is only a receiver. In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. Those are his words. Tesla claimed that many of his greatest ideas, like the alternating current, came to him in flashes, fully formed, as if it was tuning into a higher frequency, or he was tuning into a higher frequency. He practiced mental visualization. And our last one on the list, who's kind of recent, Ralph Waldo Emerson. He wrote some books. Emerson, a transcendentalist, believed, that's not tooth decay either, believed that ideas don't come from the brain alone, but from intuition, nature, and the oversoul, a shared spiritual intelligence. He urged people to trust their inner voice, not to conform by external beliefs. So there you go. And that, now these are some of the greater thinkers of the day. And what are they telling you? Kind of listen to the world, trust your intuition, things like that. The answers are out there. You just got to let them come to you.
But here's the thing. They all described in simple terms the quantum.
Yes. Isn't that something? How the
because
it's
out there, and if you trust your instincts and your brain, your brain processes it. Well, then they didn't know about the quantum yet.
Yeah,
they knew about it. Just like 50 years ago, I talked about this stuff, and I called it, the cosmic goo. And everybody was like, what are you talking about? There's stuff out around us. It's cosmic goo. And now I can call it the quantum.
Yep. Well, yeah. So like I said, here's the smartest thinkers of our times, and they're all saying similar stuff. I don't know.
Over centuries.
Yeah.
So millennia, actually, if Socrates and them would have been over 2 millennium. So, a vast amount of difference in time and space. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, Lucky, you trust these guys?
Well, Jung was a contemporary of Freud. And him and Freud got into a disagreement for years because they had different ideas about the mind. Jung was much more open, much more philosophical, while Freud was much more factual. And we kind of need both. That's the thing, is when the brain does not work exactly how we want it to, but does work in a logical form. So, I mean, you need both. You need Jung and you need Freud together, and that's where people would disagree. So, but Jung, the collective unconscious, I mean, come on, a lot of us, we do have a connection with each other from ways we don't understand, and that's the collective unconsciousness.
Yep.
That's the wonderful thing about being alive, is that when you are truly free, you can be a part of the universe. You can be part of the collective and not be judgmental. Being judgmental is so lower class human, not lower class, but lower
Energy.
mindset. Yeah, lower energy human is basically me versus them.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of us, when we have to assign labels, we're lower energy. But when we're free to say we're all the same, we're all unique and linked, we can be open up to ideas, and I mean, I think that's the big thing about everything, about all the ones who control media, government, religion. They want to separate us. But the truth comes to we're all the same, we're all equal. And the funniest thing is the biggest religion, the Christianity, the biggest, most powerful religion, because all of us in the West have more power than most small countries. Jesus taught about we're all, take care of each other, love each other. Jesus would never be about, war and fighting and trying to convert anybody. Jesus was about being inclusive. And that's the funniest part of all being about Christianity, you can even guess, is that Jesus was collective, was inclusive. I mean, the Samaritan, the Samaritan were the lowest class of Jews you could have. They were hated. And he was teaching that the Samaritan was the one person who was truly the good guy. And that's what Jesus was teaching. And we call the Good Samaritan, about being good to each other. It was far more difficult than that, where it's basically about trusting those that you would normally disrespect. It's about inclusive, and we're all on the same level. We just need to understand each other and stop separating each other. But yeah, everything's available if we just relax and learn not to be separated from anyone else.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, we're wrapping down the clock. So
wait a minute. Wait. Yeah, we have folks out there. I guess I've been swimming in this goo for so long, I just take it for granted,
Yeah.
And I take it for granted in a way that other people they don't have a clue. They really don't have a clue. And I'm just a kook. But I'm a kook who understands what some of the greatest thinkers in the world have thought of for millennia. That this is how you do it. You get in touch with your inner self. You understand what the cosmos is about. You learn how to trust your feelings. You learn how to ask a question to the universe and then listen for the answer and then disseminate and how to make it work. So it's out there, but there are so many deniers. Well, Hawkeye, that's the devil. That's got to be the devil. Where are you getting these answers from? Some spiritual being? Well, I do say I get, messages from my spirit guides, as a lot of Native Americans and Native folks do, but, so my spirit guide says, don't go down there. You're going to get in trouble. I'm going to go anyway. Bam, I'm in trouble. So I listen to him or them. But there are folks who would deny it because of Christianity. Dang it. Because anything like that has got to be supernatural and must be connected with the devil. And so there are a lot of folks who don't even want to think about this kind of stuff because it's the devil that's making you think that way. It's the devil that's now. What about those evil people that use the quantum for nefarious purposes.
Mm-hmm.
I had to ask that question. Well,
Yeah.
So what, are those evil thoughts out there? Do they go out there and collect them and bring them in?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's both good and bad. It doesn't, there is no good and bad. It's just there is, and it's however you use that information.
It's how they use it. A fire can warm you and give you light, and then a fire can also burn a person.
That's right. Bring the house down too.
Right, and do destruction. So
either or.
It's how it's used. I absolutely agree.
So here's our final question for tonight, and then we're gonna let on off as people can head over to Max Vision Remote View and practice with your brain. Get rid of those thoughts, open your mind, and see things that aren't there, and it'll be good. So here's our thoughts.
Wait. I can follow up on that. As you clean things up in your brain, just don't willy-nilly throw things out, because sometimes there might be a little box of something over here in the corner. You might need to leave that there for further reference.
Well, yeah,
but make sure as you go through and clean out your closet, that you go, no, I really don't need this. And if there's something negative, you just shove it aside.
That's right.
And make sure that as you throw things out of your brain, you don't throw a good thought out with the bad, So anyway.
I was talking, well, we should, that was on my list here. It says, we should watch our thoughts. Don't believe all of them, but you don't throw them all out either. Listen to the quiet voice within. We should practice mental stillness and so we can receive some clarity. And most of all, recognize that our thought is just one tool in the toolbox of human knowing. What do you all say to that?
Where do you want to start?
Well, David just went through about the thoughts. We shouldn't throw them all out. We should keep some and kind of sort through. Should we listen to the quiet voice within then?
Well, that's the thing. When I talk about ego, that's what the ego only acts up when you don't listen to it. You don't kill the ego. It will just change its face. The ego is there for a purpose. It's your guard dog. And if you don't treat your guard dog right, it's going to bite you. But if you treat the guard dog right, it's going to bark a lot, yes. But it might be barking at something you should pay attention to. So its barks aren't as important as maybe what it's focused on. So maybe you should pay attention to that. Well, take the negative thoughts and say, okay, I have a negative thought. Maybe something's behind that. The negative thought is off, yes. But what started as the truth in there might be have to find that. So yes, you can't throw everything away, but you do have to listen to the inner voice, even if it's negative, because there might be a message in there. And just because somebody's on the spiritual path that you might not agree with, if they're Christian and they're in sin and hate and the devil and Satan, and just because you're on a different path doesn't mean you can't just say, that's your belief. You can have that. You can't convert anybody. They can't convert me. I can't convert them. But we can still listen to each other on the same level and express each other and appreciate each other for our opinions and take what's good and grow upon there. Like I said, Jesus would never be converting anybody, but he would be teaching about what the right way and what the good way is. And just because you don't follow it doesn't mean he's going to throw you away. He's going to say, you're still my brother. I still love you. I still appreciate you. That's what happens with thoughts.
Yeah,
exactly.
And and the thing that Jesus taught was that we are all brothers and sisters, that we are all basically equal. We are all equal, endowed by our Creator. If the beginning of the
Declaration of Independence,
or the other one. Anyway, but
Declaration of Independence is the Declaration.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But there's that other one too that they wrote. But
the Constitution. There's the
but the other one, the Bill of Rights or something like that.
Confederation, the Bill of Rights.
Yes. Yeah. There was that too. So, but anyway, and there were some nice little words and paragraphs in that one too, about equality and stuff. But anyway, so but people view that's what I wanted to say about the ego. We have to have the ego in order to get by. Okay, but what does that mean? If we didn't have ego, I would not have gone out and done puppet shows. I would have stayed at home because you have to sell yourself. You got to go out. You got to do this, and you got to push your ego past the comfort level. And some people play with ego so much they can't rein it in. Like some of these other actors and stuff, their ego is present everywhere they go, and it's just ego. But we have to have ego. It's important. But it's also very important to keep that ego in check. So when people say, oh, the ego, blah, 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 it's bad. No, we got to have it. If you're successful in a business, lucky, whatever, you're working with chemicals and things and stuff, and you got to have ego because you know that you're right. When you do something and tell these guys, you know you're right when you tell them, no, guys, it's going to take 2 months for this to happen. No, it'll be done in 20 days. No, and you end up being right because of what you've learned. But your ego, sorry, I'm using you as the example, but your ego says, sorry, guys, you can say whatever you want, but I know what I know. And this is it. So, but ego is the one that stands out and says, hey, wait, now that's just an example because you were discussing it.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually a little off. You're a little off because my ego says, I told you once. You don't listen? That's fine. Just because I'm right 2 months down the road doesn't make me happy, because usually it means more work for me in the end because I have to prove it.
Yeah,
right. I understand, but I'm saying that the ego is what brings that out.
No, rational thought and creativity bring that out. The ego is the one to cause you to to watch for it, but the creativity is what in the rational thought and the analytical thought is what really, the ego is a mess.
Right.
Look.
The ego is also what gives you the strength to speak up.
I have no ego that way. I don't speak up. I just tell them once and I'm done. If I really had ego, I would be really going crazy. I'd be going crazy. Well, because I work third shift. I work nights. No one listens to night shift people.
That's true. That is so true.
Yep.
Anyway, we're gonna wrap this up. We'll probably, like David said earlier today, we're gonna have to have a part 2 on this one. But we'll get into this more next time. So next week, join us again as we get into more thought, thinking, and stuff like that. Remember, recognize that your thought is just one tool in your toolbox of human knowing. There's a lot of things out there. Just don't trust one thing. Thank you for everybody who is in chat tonight. A lot of people here. Pamela Jean, 7B, I am Maximus, Trina Phoenix, The Crow 11, Chloe, Elderberry, Eagle Emerald, and Dragon Sage. A lot of people haven't seen you. Great to see you all tonight joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to David's channel. Don't forget to subscribe to Lucky's channel or subscribe to mine. Deborah L. Smith was here tonight. Let's see. Sunset Dreamer, Witchy Moon. Let's see. Deborah L. says Witchy Moon. I think I got. And Courtney joined us for a little while tonight. Maybe she's still here. Who knows? I don't know. But thank you either way. She had a lot of. Savage Lee was here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Go over to Max Vision Remote View. Promote your own mind. Do a little remote viewing. It's fun. Costs you nothing. Just go over there. It's a little bit calming and relaxing. And that's how you remote view, is by clearing your mind. And then
opening your mind.
Yes, clearing and opening your mind. Exactly. So with that, everyone, Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks,
Remember, thank you, Lucky, for joining us on short notice. And Hawkeye, we will see you again on Tuesday. And who knows, maybe tomorrow night on Nina's channel. She was here earlier tonight. Remember, tomorrow night, Nina the Mystic will be on there talking more. We got a special coming up with the Sin Day Live. So if she's feeling better, we will be doing a show. So with that, everybody, go out and do something nice for yourself and your neighbor. Sit quietly. Take your time. Ask the universe to give you some knowledge. Remember, you cannot, I stress this a lot, don't ask the universe to give you the designs to build a rocket ship and fly to Mars, because it won't do it. You have to ask for things that are relative, that you can actually understand. And the other stuff would just all be gobbledygook. So ask for something nice. Start out small. Hey, I should have a good day tomorrow. Maybe it'll rain on my garden and not on me. Something simple like that. Maybe.
And an acorn will grow into an oak tree.
That's right. Exactly. Start small.
A little old tiny thing. I got oak trees right outside the house. Big, beautiful, oak trees. So, so a tiny thought can expand to build a rocket ship.
Yeah, but like I said, you have to have
start out small.
Yeah, start off small. Yeah, exactly. And with that, people, be the frequency you want to receive. Love you all, everyone. Peace, everybody.
Cheers.